welcome to another Crafts and Crimes. This evening I'm going to be doing a watercolor of this sad girl you see me sketching out there. And I'm going to talk about the crimes of Jeffrey Dahmer. Yeah, I hope you can hear me. I don't have a microphone. I'm not that fancy. I'm sitting in front of my computer talking into it. I don't even know where the speaker on this thing is, so I'm just talking as if I feel kind of crazy actually, but here we go. This is stuff I like to talk about. So if all two people listening are interested, that's wonderful. Jeffrey Dahmer. He was born in 1960. He was an American serial killer. We all know that, sex offender. He actually murdered 17 men and boys. Now, let's start with his early life so we can find out some answers to why he was so fucked up. He was born in Wisconsin and is the son of Joyce and Lionel Dahmer. And 7 years later, his brother David was born. It says here Joyce Dahmer reportedly had a difficult pregnancy with her elder son. But Jesus Christ, why are you blaming her for that? That doesn't make her whatever. I don't know how to fix this audio, so if I screw up like that, I'm just going to keep going and I'll learn how to edit audio someday. So anyway, mother blaming, always blaming the mother. Anyway, he moved with his family, and can you hear that? I'm getting texts through my computer that I don't want to get, and I don't know how to make them stop coming. So if you hear that beep, which I'm sure you do, that's something I don't know how to stop. So he was 8 years old. They moved to Ohio, and Dahmer grew increasingly withdrawn and uncommunicative between the ages of 10 and 15, and he was very different, and socially he wasn't interacting with any of his peers. So what he did do, which won't surprise you, is bike around his neighborhood looking for dead animals and things he could dissect in his home. So in one instance, as a teenager, he put a dog's head on a stake. And if that doesn't give you everything you need to know about this person, I don't know what else is. What kind of monster does that? Apparently, he was an outcast at high school. No surprise there. But some of the kids thought he was a cult figure because he made fun of his mother's interior decorator. That's kind of random. But she had cerebral palsy, so his imitation of her, so he's a sociopath, gave him a little bit of cred in high school. Just bullshit. So in 1977, Lionel and Joyce divorced, and Dahmer tried university. He was drunk the whole first semester, so dropped out, and his father forced him to enlist in the army. So he was also discharged from the army due to the alcoholism. But when they discharged him, and I don't know anything about the army, but it says here he got a ticket to anywhere. So he didn't want to face his dad. He decided to go to Miami Beach because he was tired of the cold. So he spent most of his time there. He was living with his, he then, after being a drunk asshole in Miami, ran out of money, got kicked out of everywhere he was staying because he was drinking too much. He decided to come home and live with his grandmother, but she was finding weird shit. Like, she was finding a fully dressed male mannequin in his closet, and she said terrible smells were coming from the basement. And so you can just imagine. And at one time, she found a dead squirrel that he had dissolved with chemicals. So, he's a total creep. Anyway, the painting, we'll take a break from Dahmer for a second because I really hate it. I was trying to do this. I like doing my shadows in purple, and you're probably looking at the watercoloring I'm doing there and why is she covering half that face with purple and why that big chunk of purple on the neck. But I'm trying to get, because I really like how purple looks as a shadow rather than just a darker color of the skin color. So I'm trying to do this particular color I have in these Jane Davenport watercolor palettes, this pale purple, and I keep fucking it up. But anyway, so I just used a little bit of paper towel probably. I don't know, I'm half paying attention, half looking at my notes. And you can still see how horrible my watercolor palettes look. That probably makes you ill. But that's how I do, as I've said before. Now, grandmother decided to ask him to move out. He was arrested twice while living with her for indecent exposure. And one of the offenses, he masturbated in front of two boys. So grandmother was like, no, you got to go. So he moved out, and the behavior got really bad. And he was I guess he was a sex offender, and he was under probation. So um, later that night, he found an apartment. Wait a minute, I'm mixing up my pages. Dang it. Oh, yeah. On September 26, 1988, one day after moving into his apartment after moving out from his grandmother, he was arrested for drugging and fondling a 13-year-old boy in Milwaukee. He got 5 years probation, which is bullshit, and 1 year work release camp. So, whatever that is. He registered as a sex offender, and he was paroled shortly after he served his probation and moved into a new apartment. And then he started his murders. So, as if the animal shit and the indecent exposure and masturbating and then fondling a child wasn't enough clues to tell people that this was a monster. So, that is the next step, as we know now. Maybe we didn't know then. I don't know. I don't know what we knew in the 80s. But we know now. We know that there are steps to these things. And what is that serial killer triad? Pee the bed, start fires, torture animals. You know he had all those. So, anyway, the murders. Let's talk about the murders. Dahmer committed his first murder in 1978. He was only 18 years old. His father was away on business. His mother had moved out, taking the little brother, and he was left behind. So he picked up a hitchhiker named Stephen Hicks and offered to drink beer with him at his father's house. He eventually wanted to have sex with him, but when Hicks tried to leave, Dahmer bludgeoned him to death with a 10-pound dumbbell. He said he didn't want to. He buried the body in the backyard, and 9 years passed before he killed again, which is rather interesting that he had that big one at 18 and held out for 9 years. But obviously, him saying he didn't want to after he was caught and being sentenced is not. I mean, we don't take anything he says seriously. However, it is interesting that he had a 9-year break. That we know of. Dahmer picked up a 26-year-old Stephen Tuomi at a bar and killed him on impulse after his 9-year hiatus from killing. And he said he had no memory of committing the crime, so he may have been, I don't know, blackout drunk. So after that murder, he continued to kill sporadically 2 more murders in 1988, another one in 1989, and he picked up his victims in gay bars. And the saddest part about that is in the 80s, people definitely weren't as comfortable being out as they are today, and I hope they're more comfortable today. But in the 80s, and it certainly wouldn't have been easy to be gay and go to gay bars. And see, there's that beep again. Sorry, I don't know how to turn it off. So he was picking victims that really probably didn't tell anyone where they were going. Maybe didn't have anybody with them that could say this might be a bad idea to go home with a stranger, etc., etc. So these men might have been on their own, trying to just be who they were, and might have been on their own, and then victim to this serial killer. So he kept the skull of one of the victims, Anthony Sears, until he was caught. So a trophy, I guess they call it. In May 1990, because he had moved back in with his grandmother here and there throughout this time, he moved out of her house for the last time, and he got an apartment. And that would be apartment 213, 924 North, 25th Street, Milwaukee. And apparently that's an infamous apartment because he did pick up the pace of his killings, because he is quite notorious with the number of murders he committed. So 17 men is quite high. So 4 more murders by the end of 1990, 2 more in February and April 91, another in May 91, and in the early morning hours of May 27, 1991, a 14-year-old Konarak. Now I don't know how to say this last name. Synthesophone. I really apologize because this is such a sin that I don't know how to say that. I can't even begin. Anyway, he was the younger brother of the boy he had molested. He was discovered bleeding from his rectum, so two women from the neighborhood found the dazed boy and called 911. Dahmer chased his victim down and tried to take him away, but the women stopped him. So Dahmer told John Balserac and Joseph Gabrish, police officers that were dispatched, that this child was his 19-year-old boyfriend and they had an argument while drinking. And there were two women saying this is bullshit. There were two women saying, no, we called 911 because this monster was trying to hurt this child. And they recognized him and they said that this was a child that couldn't speak English and he was not Dahmer's boyfriend. The fucking officers turned the boy, who did not speak English, over to Dahmer. Okay, I need to take a break because that makes me so mad. So you just watch. I don't know why I'm doing her neck orange now. I don't know what the hell that is. Oh, I think I remember. So her neck was super long and it looked really weird. It looked like a Mo Digliani girl, but like not good like his. So I thought, instead of her having a weirdly long neck, I will give her, what do they call it, a cowl scarf or something? I was going to give her a big scarf. So that's what I'm going to try to do. So you'll see. And I don't know why I'm tapping my, oh yeah, I'm like, what am I going to do with this? She looks crazy. I don't know. I did end up liking her in the end. I'm looking at the actual finished piece right now and I kind of do like her. So I don't know how she goes from, oh, see, I blew my candle out. Oh, I'm going to let her dry. I'm going to walk away. Seamless editing. Did you see that? And then I light that candle to be fancy. Meant to put it in the shot. And in fact, I think it is in the shot as I'm painting, not in the shot. Now I'm thinking, what the hell am I going to do to this to make this? How do I salvage this with her weird long orangey brown neck and her ghostly eyes? Going in with black markers. All right, let's go on here. That poor boy. Okay. So they later reported smelling a strange scent while inside Dahmer's apartment, but they did not investigate it. That's the police officers. The smell was the body of a previous victim, Tommy Hughes, decomposing in Dahmer's bedroom. The officers did not make any attempt to verify the little boy's age or identity or to locate someone who could communicate with him. So they failed to run a background check, and if they had done so, they would have immediately realized that this was a sex offender they were talking to, and he was trying to take custody of this boy he was calling his boyfriend, who didn't speak English. So yeah, I love police officers. There's really few people that I respect more, but in this situation, that was bullshit. They did not do their job. Later that night, he killed and dismembered that little guy, and he kept his skull as a souvenir. That is absolutely devastating. By summer 91, Dahmer was murdering about one person a week. He killed Matt Turner on June 30th, Jeremiah Weinberger on July 5th, Oliver Lacey on July 12th, and finally Joseph Brandehoft on July 19th. Dahmer got the idea he could turn his victim into zombies who were completely submissive, eternally youthful sexual partners, and he tried to drill, this is so fucked, he tried to drill holes into their skulls and inject hydrochloric acid or boiling water in the frontal lobe of their brains with a syringe. And this is dark. He tried to do it when they were still alive. So that is so horrifying. I'm sorry I put that in your head, but it's in my head, so I need to get that out of my head and share that with you. So other residents in the apartment, of course, thank God he couldn't afford a fucking house, because these residents that smelled the decomposing of these bodies were the only reason he ever fucking got caught for anything. So that infamous apartment, 213, people were calling and saying it smelled funny, and they heard weird thumps, and they heard the occasional buzzing of a power saw. This is 91. Okay, this is beyond to even think that that was, a short time ago. Oh, so anyway, he didn't have a type, if that matters. His victims were from a variety of racial backgrounds, and so luckily he was arrested. Okay, this is how it happened. Listen to this asshole get arrested. On July 22nd, 1991, he lured a man, Tracy Edwards, into his home, and according to the would-be victim, Dahmer struggled with Edwards in order to handcuff him, but ultimately failed. Thank God. Anyway, he was wielding a butcher knife and he tried to force this victim, Tracy Edwards, into his bedroom. But Edwards saw fucked up pictures of mangled bodies on the wall and also noticed the smell and knew something was wrong. There was a large blue barrel. He knew something was, it was filled with something disgusting. And actually, you can imagine it was just the sludge of disposed bodies. So he punched Dahmer in the face, kicked him in the stomach, ran for the door, and escaped. So he was a badass motherfucker. And he is the reason, because he kept his eyes open, paying attention. This is fucked up. I'm not going to, as some of my favorite podcasters say, fuck politeness. If you think something's off and the back of your neck, the hairs are standing up, you get the fuck out of there, because your lizard brain knows. I always trust my lizard brain. And this guy, and you didn't even need lizard brain. You smell decomposing shit and see pictures of mangled bodies. You don't even need your lizard brain for that. You can just use your common sense and get the fuck out of there. So this guy ran down the street. He had handcuffs on one hand, waved a police car down, thank God, and he led those police right back to that apartment where Dahmer first acted friendly to the officers. But Edwards recalls the knife he had threatened him with was in the bedroom, and when one of the officers checked the bedroom, he saw the photograph of the mangled bodies. There were pictures of his victims, the human remains, severed heads, severed hands, severed penises, and it was an absolute nightmare, like a living nightmare for these poor police officers to have to walk into and discover a monster. So the story of his arrest and the inventory of the apartment obviously gained a lot of notoriety, because he was even putting candles in human skulls, like he was one fucked up puppy. A lot of people believe he practiced necrophilia and cannibalism, but I don't think we have any, or at least I haven't found any proof on those accusations. But he was collecting the skulls, and he had 7 in his apartment, and he had a human heart in the freezer. So after he was caught, he was indicted on 17 murder charges, and his trial began in 92. That's crazy to me. That's when I started high school. I just feel like I was oblivious. I didn't have a clue this was going on. He pled not guilty by reason of insanity, which is bullshit. But they found him sane and guilty, and he was sentenced to 15 life terms, 957 years in prison, which isn't enough, but there you go. They didn't have capital punishment, so he was going to be in jail for until he died. He wished for his own death. Poor baby, it's such a sin. You fucked up, and you have to go to jail, and yeah, anyway. He was extradited to Ohio, and he pled guilty. He served some time, and he was attacked multiple times in prison. He tried to become a born-again Christian. Bullshit. And even if you did, like, too fucking bad. It doesn't matter. It does not erase what you did. He was attacked twice in prison, I said, and people tried to slash his throat with a razor blade. Anyway, eventually he was beaten so severely by an inmate that he did die of severe head trauma while on his way to the hospital. So, later for him, I'm sure no one lost any sleep over that one. That was 1994. Unreal. Oh, look, I'm almost out of time. Anyway, that really is the end of it. You know, there are many books and movies about this. I don't know if you'd be interested. Look, she kind of turned out, don't you think? Kind of like her. I like her little scarf. Look, I only sign shit if I like it, so I obviously liked it. Blow my candle out, let the smoke go up to the camera. So fancy, so aesthetic. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Whoops.